make an almond tart crust. Pretty much whenever I make a dessert tart, I like to use this crust because it comes out really cookie-like. It's got a great flavor, and it's just never failed me as a tart crust. All right, so we're going to toast. These are sliced almonds. We're going to toast them to help bring out the flavor. So into a dry, hot pan on medium heat, we put our almonds, and then just kind of keep them moving around a little bit. We can let them warm up, but once they start to get warm, you have to keep them moving or the bottom layer will burn. That's not quite the flavor we were trying to bring out. So we really want this toasted almond flavor. So now you can see that these are starting to get a little bit of color to them. So this is toasted enough. We don't want to go any farther than that or we'll get burnt flavor. So now we've got to let these cool before we can put them in our crust. So the first thing we need is a cup of flour. And y'all know how to measure flour. If you take your cup and drag it through the flour, it compacts and you don't get an accurate measurement. So the most accurate way to measure flour is to weigh it. And a cup of flour would weigh 120 grams. But for this purpose today, you just spoon it in loosely. You don't pack it down or anything. And in this way, you'll get a cup of flour that weighs close to 120 grams. So there we go. We got our cup of flour into the food processor. It goes with a 1/4 cup of sugar, a 1/2 teaspoon of almond extract, it's actually better to measure this not over the bowl of the food processor just in case you spill a little, pour too much. And a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And this I will measure outside here because it's a full salt container. 6 tablespoons of butter, and it's best if the butter's still cold. And our cooled down, roasted, toasted almonds. And that should be everything. So now we're going to pulse this a few times. What we want to do is cut all that butter out into little pieces. That looks pretty good. You can see it's got a little grain to it. It looks pretty good. And the almonds are cut up. So now we're going to add a little bit of water to get this to come together as a dough. Very little, like a tablespoon at a time. And you'll see the change happen pretty quickly here. That's enough. I think it's going to go here. It's starting to lump up. Maybe just a little bit more. There we go. I think I can get that into a lump now. now. So then we take our dough and put it into our prepared tart shell. I've just oiled this tart shell. It doesn't really need a lot of oil because there's so much butter in the crust, but you really don't want it to stick at the end. And we're just going to press this into the shell, into the pan. Try to get it as even and really kind of as thin as possible. And you can see that this dough is really easy to work with. It's not like a lot of pie doughs that are really cold and have to be cold in order to work, or are difficult to move around. This one, you just put it where you want it. Keep moving it and look for thin spots. You can fill in a thin spot by sliding some dough over to it. If there's a place where it's not coming up to the edge very well, you can steal some from another spot and bring it over there, and it'll just glue itself together. I like this dough. It's just so easy to work with. And you want this to get up to the lip of the pan, which will help keep the sides from sliding down in when you bake it. And I've got kind of a thick spot in a lot of places right at the edge here, and if you leave that, then you've got a really thick edge on your crust, and it's too thick really to be, I mean, it tastes good, but you really don't want it that thick right there. So that's a spot that you kind of have to work a little bit to get it thin and even. So now that we've got this up, roll it over the edge. And voila, a tart case. So now we will line this with a nice pre-cut piece of parchment paper. I save this and reuse it. This has been around, this has been used many times. And today we have some brand new pie weights. I've been using some beans for quite a while, but they've lost all their moisture and they're not very heavy anymore. So these pie weights will help keep the crust in place and keep the sides from shrinking down into the pan. And believe me, I've had my share of trouble with this. And pie weights are the way to go. So there we have it. There's really no place for this crust to go. It's just going to sit there and cook. And we're going to pop this into a 400-degree oven. And tart pans, because they do have a little space between the bottom and the sides, and you're using a lot of oil in the crust, they can leak out the bottom. So always put your tart pan on a cookie sheet in the oven. And there you have it. We're going to let that cook for 20 minutes. And we'll see what we got when it comes out. All right, so this has been in for 15 minutes, and I would really like to use the last 5 minutes to cook the bottom a little more. So we're going to get the pie weights out, hopefully. I've never done this with these little weights before. And we'll see how well this works.
Looks like it's going to be marble.
Yep. good.
Careful, they're hot. Step on them.
All right, so that's going to be fine. I'm going to put this back in for 5 more minutes. And I think we'll just ignore those few little weights that are on there. What? Okay.